Can you start off by telling us, what does your organisation offer men and women who are struggling with their sexuality and who come to you for help?
We support them as they explore issues of sexuality. Very often they want alternatives. They may have been told by professionals that they simply have to accept the fact that these feelings are a reality, that they're part of a person's life and they cannot change. What we offer is an exploration around these feelings to see what the possibilities are. They didn't choose the feelings, but they have choices around the feelings, is what we would say.
And when you say exploration, can you just tell us what you mean by that?
We have conversations with them. So it's talking therapy, if you want to use that term. It's counseling, and we simply engage with them. So we'll listen to perhaps the history of their lives, how it's been for them at home, how it's been with colleagues, perhaps at school, relationships with siblings, with parents, but it's all in the context of having a conversation around these issues.
And in those conversations, are you seeking to find a cause for their current sort of feelings?
We are listening to hear what is important. What are the important events in their lives? Have there been issues in their lives that after which they have felt particularly drawn in this sense? But we're not necessarily listening for a cause. We're simply wanting to understand the client. We're wanting to know where they're coming from, what their expectations are, what difficulties they've had, particularly in relationships with the same sex and with the opposite sex.
And what kind of backgrounds would your clients come from in terms of, I know you can't obviously go into confidential details, but just for the viewer, what kind of experiences do they come with to you who are struggling with sexuality?
They come from so many different backgrounds. Probably 50% are from a faith background, but 50% are from a no faith or an other faith background. They might be married, they might be single. They would range, I would say, from early 20s into early 50s. The Trust does not work with children at all. Typically, they would be well educated. Usually, they're quite well informed about the issues around sexuality, and they have a view around sexual politics as it's being played out in the UK at the moment. So they'll be aware, for example, that there is a campaign and a concern to ban therapeutic choice in the country. And this is often something that's very disturbing to them.
What would you regard as a success story? And could you give us some examples of what would you regard as a success story? And can you give us some examples of young people or people who came to you and that you would regard the outcome for them as a success?
Yeah, I think that the purpose and the goal of the counselling that we do is well-being. The goal is not necessarily heterosexuality. People have different goals that they want to try and effect in their lives, and therefore outcomes are always different. So people may come with compulsive behaviours that they want to change. They want to learn to manage themselves in a different way. Others really do want to enter into a relationship with the opposite sex. They want to marry and they want to have children from their own biological processes, so that becomes a priority for them. So in terms of success, we don't promise or expect a certain kind of change because this is an exploration after all. But I suppose the kind of successes that I have seen are firstly around people whose sense of well-being has greatly improved. So there's a certain shame that is attached to them over the years, and we work very much on that. The shame is something that we need to deal with, probably first of all. There are others who learn a lot about assertiveness, and they have been people who have just gone with the crowd, never really asserted themselves, never held an opinion, never wanted to put their heads above the parapet. They've wanted to kind of be obscure. And what we find through assertiveness training is that they begin to understand who they are, and they begin to understand their own value, their own intrinsic value. Maybe they discover that actually they have a mission in life, and they want to be able to fulfill something special in their lives. But there are others who do eventually go on into successful, viable heterosexual relationships, having started as gay identified. I can think of specific cases where they have sought us out, and probably over a period of at least a year to 2 years of ongoing counseling and talking therapy, they have gotten to the place where their confidence level is such that they want to begin to interact with people of the opposite sex. And actually I'm talking about men who want to have a relationship with a woman. And they will go on, and that will be something that becomes a completely new world for them.
So do you believe fundamentally that homosexuality is a pathology that can be treated?
I don't use the medical model. So treatment is something, and pathology is something that is not a discipline that I am trained for or familiar with. What I'm talking about is a sense of identity and about behaviors that are inconsistent with the values, the primary values of the people who are coming to visit us. The two just don't mix. They don't feel comfortable either with their behaviors or with their fantasies, and that's what we want to explore. But obviously we have to be very careful, because we have to be realistic in terms of what is likely to change and what is likely to remain with people, if I can put it in that way, because there are people who don't experience a change in the way that they thought they would. And we are not aiming for some kind of 180-degree change in terms of, every fantasy or every thought. We're not looking for a categorical change. That's not what, we wouldn't support this notion of gay cure or this idea of a categorical change. What we are looking for is for the client to have a sense of at-homeness in their own skin, so that they feel comfortable with what is happening in their lives. And if they are seeking to have viable relationships with the opposite sex, we will support them in that, if that is their goal.
So are you talking about management?
To some extent it is management, but it's, I don't think we should be afraid of the word change. We go to doctors, we go to psychologists, we even go to the pharmacist, because we want to effect change in some aspect of our lives. And in this context, people want change in terms of maybe fantasy, maybe practices that they are involved in, and sometimes they want change in terms of how they align their lives and the direction that they go in. And I don't think we should be afraid of that kind of notion.
And are you saying that men in that situation can go on, can control their fantasies, can manage their orientation, their feelings, their practices, and can actually go on and marry women and have children?
Well, I'm not only saying it's a possibility, it's a reality. It's a reality all over the world, which of course is denied by those who would detract from this particular point of view. But it's happening all the time. Even the national population statistics show that over time many people move away from gay practices and gay identity to heterosexual practices. It's not recognized, but it's there in the Office of the National Statistics Population Studies and in the NatCell studies. It's there.
Do you think that that's fair on the women that these men go on to form relationships with and marry? That they are with partners who have to control or manage their feelings?
You're making an assumption here that we are only talking about management. There is an assumption, I would say, in your question that seems to be saying that you can only control, you can only repress. But many of these men will talk about the fact that they don't have the same emotional nature that they felt they had before they went through the process. It's changed. They don't have the same fantasies. When they're on the bus or in the train or driving a car, they don't have the same thoughts. Now, I'm not saying that that's always the case, but that is clearly the case with some. And it's not an aspiration, it's a reality. There are people who will tell you that change has taken place. Now, is that 100% categorical change? Who can say? What do we expect when a person is depressed and goes to a GP? How do we define success there? Is it that they are never depressed again? Or is it they're able to get on with life, get back into their job, pay their bills, pay their taxes? Does that not constitute success? And is it not similar in this context?
Well, we will talk about other people's experiences. In your core issues statement of belief, you clearly say, the Church of Jesus Christ, when true to the Scriptures, properly provides a spiritual home and sensitive support for believers and seekers who struggle with issues of sexual brokenness, including homosexuality. That's a direct quote. If your starting reference is that homosexuality is broken sexuality, at the very least, are you not suggesting that their sexuality needs to be repaired or fixed for that person to be whole? Is that not a form of conversion therapy? Brokenness.
We have a very clear view, because we're a Christian charity, in terms of the Judeo-Christian foundations of sexuality as revealed in the Bible. That unapologetically is our starting point.
But can you understand how young men have felt when they have been told that their sexuality is broken and that the devastation that has caused? I mean, do you see that?
The people who come in my direction are very clear about what they want. And usually they are fully appraised in terms of what the charity is teaching and what it stands for. So they know very clearly what we believe about homosexuality and some of the practices that the tradition of the church has always taught is a problem in terms of spirituality. That is a fact. We do teach that.
And what is your view on homosexuality?
That homosexuality is something that certainly in my life I knew to be contradictory to some other values that were much more important to me than my ideas about sexuality. It was something that did not sit comfortably with me, that caused a problem in my relationships, and ultimately, when I married, that was potentially a problem there, to the point where I felt I needed to make some changes and I needed to get help. I couldn't bring about what I needed, so I sought professional help and received it. And that's why I'm passionate about the fact that people should have access to the rights and freedom to decide their own direction, and that it should not be therapists and counselors who decide the direction that they should go in.
But do you believe fundamentally that homosexuality is wrong? Do you believe that it's a sin?
Yes, in terms of God's revelation to the world, yes, I think that homosexuality is something that is sinful.
So when you counsel or support these young men, you're starting from the premise that homosexuality is wrong or sinful.
Well, this is an assumption that I'm afraid is being made in your question.
You've just said to me that you believe.
No, you asked what my opinion is, and I gave you my opinion, and when people come to me, they usually will know what my opinion is. But you know, we don't talk about theology. The people who come into my room, or who I meet online or on the phone, don't necessarily hold the same worldview as I do. Some may come from a completely secular point of view. And they too feel the same thing, that it is inconsistent with their own values. And these are not naive 20-year-olds. These can be older people, well educated, well instructed in life, who have not experienced so-called systemic internalized homophobia, have lived freely as gay people, but simply want to go in a new direction. Why are we not being supportive of their rights and freedoms?
So we spoke to two young men, Gareth Patterson and Gary Adair Gilliland. They're both GPs. Gareth Patterson is a GP, he's now working in East Belfast. Gary Adair Gilliland is a GP, he's working in North Belfast. Do you remember meeting Gareth Patterson? He said he met you once at length in Hillsborough Park.
I do remember that.
He was 19, 20, very in turmoil over his sexuality. He wanted to get rid of his homosexual feelings. He said that he didn't know anyone who was gay, that he was frightened that he would lose everything, that everyone he knew was getting married and having children, and that can you remember that meeting that day?
I can remember that meeting, yes.
What was it like from your point of view?
Well, Gareth was a sincere young man with a very clear determination in terms of the direction that he wanted to go in. He was seeking help, and he asked for the names of professional people who would be able to help him, and he was given that information. From me, he seemed to want me to be around so that there would be another person to talk to. And so I think between 2009 and 2012, we had very occasional email conversations.
But he then began to get group and individual support from Dr. Mark.
Paul Miller.
He then began to get group and individual support from Paul Miller. One of the things that Gareth says very clearly is that at that time he was very vulnerable. He did approach you, he did go there seeking help, he wanted help. But that after the therapy began, he gradually became to see that it was actually making his mental health much, much worse. He felt that the starting point was that he was somehow broken, and that he needed healed, he needed fixed, that the therapy from the very beginning was seeking sort of causes for his homosexuality, exploring his background, his parents' relationship, his relationship with his parents, and he felt it was almost as if a reason was being sought for why he was broken and needed fixed. And as time went on and he matured, he became more and more depressed because he felt that he just wasn't there as a human being. What's your reaction to that?
And he went into a gay relationship, ultimately, yes. Well, I think there are several things to pick up on. First of all, of course, he was referred to me by another group. So it didn't start with me, it started somewhere else. Then he came to me, I gave him the information, and he went into group therapy. Now, I can't talk about anybody else's therapy, but this is the point I would like to make. This country has succeeded largely through the Royal College of Psychiatrists and other groups in the country of completely polarizing this particular issue. We should all be against poor therapy, against bad practice, against anything that ultimately or potentially is going to harm people. But if we polarize people and we stop people from being able to access professional therapy, for example, we deny them the importance of collegiality in terms of having relationships with people who are very experienced in the field. We disallow them to engage in any kind of ongoing, continuing professional development. Then is it any reason, or is it not reasonable to see that, we're going to end up where we have? We have a memorandum of understanding in this country that refuses to allow psychotherapists or any medical practitioner from engaging in the exploratory work that I'm talking about. And if they do, they suffer a kickback from their professional mental health body.
But is that not because if you start from the premise that a client is damaged or wounded, is sexually broken, then you are going to compound their shame?
My point is that the experience of individuals, my experience as a man who struggled in this area, and the experience of 750 people that I would have seen over the last 10 years, has to a very large extent been that they are unhappy with what they feel inside themselves, number one. And number two, they are consistently being refused help, as I was given and successfully given, from mental health practitioners. What else can they do? They have to be true to themselves.
Do you think being true to yourself, do you think that you're saying they have to be true to themselves? Gareth Patterson says that for several years he tried and tried to date women. He tried to have a relationship with women. He felt like a failure. He felt like in the support group that he was in, the role models were held up as the men who had controlled their feelings and were able to date women. He couldn't do it until one day he woke up and said, I cannot go through with this deception, because he says it was a deception. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction to this is very specifically, Gareth asked me to be there for him. Now, between 2009, when I first met him, and 2012, when he gave us the right to publish his story, which expresses his gratitude and his thankfulness for what he had received, he never once in that time mentioned what was happening in that group. So I really...
He was 22.
Well, 22 or 23, and a medic in training to be a professional and in a caring professional context. I have to believe that Gareth would know the difference between right or wrong when it came to support. He was working with a medic. He was working...
He was being told that homosexuality was sinful. He was being told that the goal was to marry a woman and have children. He tried repeatedly to suppress his feelings until he felt so ashamed that he just could no longer do it.
I don't tell people that they should marry. I don't tell people that they should leave their homosexual feelings. I work with people who want to explore their feelings, and some of them may say to me, look, I'm okay as I am. Thank you for the time, and they move on. And that should be absolutely acceptable. There has to be choice in all of this, and it cannot be decided what the choices are by only one group of people. There are ideological differences, and yes, you are pointing out that a Christian worldview is very often contrary to this idea that homosexuality is completely normal in the human species. Some Christian viewpoints strongly disagree with that. Now, my view is this: you're not going to solve this problem simply by banning that set of ideas. What we have to do is sit down with people who differ with us and work out what is ideology and what the science actually says. But at the moment, there's one group that's calling all the shots and deciding who can train, who can supervise, who can publish, who can research, and who can do the therapy.
But are all these accredited groups, are they all wrong? And you're right. I mean, the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, there's no scientific, rational, or ethical reason to treat people who identify within a range of human sexuality any differently from those who identify solely as heterosexual. The British Psychological Society has published guidance saying that same sexual orientations are not diagnosable illnesses. They do not require any therapeutic interventions to change, alter, or control them. The British Psychoanalytical Council does not accept that a gay orientation is evidence of disturbance of the mind or development. I mean, are they all wrong? Are they not staging an intervention because they're saying this is damaging and we have to stop it?
This is exactly the point I am making. This is a monoculture of a political idea. It's one point of view. And they control, excuse me, they control who gets in, they control who describes it, they control who decides what is success. Now, if we want to move this on, because I promise you, banning will not solve the problem. It will reinvent itself in a different way. The future is to bring ideological difference together in one room and recognize the diversity, and then look at the scientific data. And you are quoting many of these mental health bodies who are citing science, and yet when we ask for the peer-reviewed scientific material that shows categorically that interventions of this nature are always harmful, not one has come forward with that. Not even the American Psychological Association, which said there is no evidence one way or the other. It doesn't exist, and that's why they don't bring it forward. So we have to distinguish between what the mental health bodies say from their executives and what the hard science says in the journals. So Ghana, for example, in 2019, the largest study that's been done in the UK, showed clearly that there is no gay gene, and that the proportion of genetic input and emotional input is tiny. And that's why, by the way, the Royal College of Psychiatrists changed its viewpoint in 2014 and stopped saying that people are born gay, and then began to speak about environmental inputs, postnatal inputs in terms of this whole equation. And I'm afraid the media and the general population is behind what the medical bodies are actually saying, that we are not born gay. Even the gay activists are saying we are not born gay.
Well, I'm actually asking my questions based on the experiences on our research. We've also spoken to another fiercely intelligent, very successful young doctor, Gary Adair Gilliland. Gary, I think, met you several times when he was in the True Freedom Trust 10 years ago, in his early 20s. I think you were running the Barnabas group at that stage. Gary says that he was from a Methodist background, that he too had no roadmap of what it was like to be gay. He was very frightened. He was in the Christian Union in Queens. He felt that if he expressed that side of his sexuality, that he would lose everything. He would lose his family, he would lose his friends, he would lose his place in his community. But he says that when he went to the support group, that he too experienced this sense that he was broken, that he wasn't quite there, that he needed repaired, and that compounded a sense of shame because he too said that he felt a failure because he couldn't date women, that he couldn't bring himself to be attracted to women, and he tried. That's the experience. That his experience also has to count for something. And in the end, he said that he felt suicidal.
My reaction to that is, I am so sorry to hear that their experiences were not what they could have been. I think today there is more choice in the world. But my concern is that we're not talking to those who have very positively gone in a different direction, who felt that they did have choices. We consistently refuse to interview people who have successfully undertaken this journey.
I've asked you about your success stories, and you told me.
Well, we need to hear from people younger than myself, people who are out there, champing at the bit, waiting to be asked to share their story, but are consistently passed up by the traditional media who don't want to hear from them. Why? Because they too, I am afraid, are under the same kind of influence that the mental health bodies are under.
I'm not under any influence.
So why?
People who said they felt suicidal, and as a journalist, I am looking at a story very openly, with no agenda, as to the therapy and what they've been through. I have no agenda. I'm coming to this as a journalist who's trying to find the facts. And I have spoken to young men who said they had a very, very negative experience. And I am asking you about that, as I am asking you to give me examples of very positive outcomes that you have witnessed.
I'll have them there next week. If you want to come and you want to interview them, they'll be there. It'd be much better to hear from them. It's pointless me just going on about successful stories. We've written about them, I've spoken about them for many years. It's better to meet the people. You can see them on social media, speaking out all over the world, but they're not given the respect or the credibility of being in control of their own lives and their own destinies. Times have changed, we're not where we were 10 years ago. Stonewall has made huge inroads in UK government policy, let's put it that way, so that there definitely is choice. Now, we are not saying that groups like Stonewall should not exist, but these people are saying that we have no right to exist. We are in the midst of a campaign that is about closing down what we do. We're not trying to close anybody down. Why is there no, there's no context in which there can be checks and balances? There's only one point of view that is allowed to exist in the land today.
Well, I think those people would say that if they're trying to close something down, it's because they believe that there's evidence there.
Where is the evidence? They need to put it on the table. We've asked the Royal College of Psychiatrists. We've communicated directly with the General Medical Council. We have looked very closely at the research. Where is this research that is showing that harm is always the outcome of such interventions? How can it be harmful to a man who has experienced abuse in his childhood and had a sense of things changing around him because of great confusion, and then when he starts to go in a new direction, he rediscovers the heterosexual feelings that he has? How is it harmful to help a married man who knows he has choices to make, and he decides with his partner that he wants to go in a different direction, away from the conflict? How can it possibly be wrong to support such people and to give them access to help?
But can you understand why some people would say, why would people marry who were still having to come to what has been described to us as top-up sessions to control or suppress their homosexuality? Is that really an ideal roadmap for a marriage?
Life is not an ideal roadmap. I don't think, in this day and age. People find themselves in all sorts of circumstances. And all we are asking and arguing for is the right for them to assert their own autonomy and to decide the direction that they want to go to, and then look for professional help where they feel they can get it. But if they're continually told, if you have the feelings, you are gay, well, the fact is they're not satisfied, you know. They're not going to be put off by professionals who are so afraid of this agenda, so ill-equipped to deal with this issue that they simply close the door on these people. It's not enough to say that one point of view finds it shameful and therefore everybody must bow down to that point of view. We need to have conversations, critical conversations, where we distinguish between ideology and scientific truth. And statements from 17 mental health bodies just don't hack it.
Can you understand the viewpoint of people like Gary Adair Gilliland and Gareth Patterson? Can you understand?
I can understand
that they think they
that
went through something that was incredibly damaging, that they went into it voluntarily and willingly at a very young age because they were confused. They felt they didn't have a choice. They just wanted rid of this. And that they then felt broken and ashamed to the point where Gary says he felt suicidal.
I can empathize with anybody on the journey, but this is the point. We are in the midst of a very concerted, well-planned campaign. Between 2009 and 2012, there was ample opportunity, actually even for both of those men, to complain. Did they complain to any therapist? Did they complain to the Charity Commission? Did they come to Core Issues Trust and make a complaint? Did they complain to the people they were with? No.
It's a huge thing.
So excuse me, Gary. The problem, Mandy, the problem is they go straight to the media. They don't come and complain using the complaints procedure that has been in place for years. Why did they not come to True Freedom Trust and complain since they had had therapy there? Did they complain to Paul Miller? No, they wait until Stonewall and the powers that be decide, now we're going to ban it. And because they're unhappy that the government has not acted on what Theresa May said in 2018, now the volume is turned up. That's the problem here.
These two men would say that they were both traumatised and that they feel that it's only now that they are at a place in their lives, both personally and professionally, where they actually feel they have the strength and the courage and the support to speak out. That is what
what I would invite them to do is make formal complaints, not using media names, but their own names. Make formal complaints to the organizations with whom they had group therapy, and let it be dealt with, face to face, not in the media, but through the process that has been worked out in any organization to deal with the complaints. Let's start there. And of course, it's regrettable that anybody has a negative experience, but we have to realize that things have changed considerably in the world today. We are all much more careful in terms of how we engage with people. But I go back to this. There are fundamental rights that we need to protect for both groups of people. And for one group of people to impose their values on another group of people, I'm afraid it will not wash in society today.
But you can understand why people watching will say, could all of these associations, GPs, psychiatrists, Christian counsellors, psychoanalysts, could they all be wrong and you're right?
Well, I'm going to offer this explanation. I'm afraid it's naive if we think that professional mental health bodies come to some kind of consensus and then make their statements. The Royal College of Psychiatrists, under the leadership of Professor Michael King, was led by him in the original attempt to communicate with government around the time of same-sex marriage. And what we know is that when he communicated with the Church of England and with Parliament over the issues, he cited, I think it was 13 primary sources in terms of his research. The document is still available. And he cites 13 primary sources in that context. And when you analyze them, when you look closely at them and you compare what the Royal College of Psychiatrists says and what the original sources say, you see that there is a great difference. Now, fair enough, if that was only my opinion, that would be suspect. But, you know, in 2014, the Pilling Commission, led by the Church of England, producing a report of well over 200 pages, looked at the evidence that we presented, at how badly the Royal College of Psychiatrists had informed both the Church of England and Parliament on this issue, and they agreed with us. They said, and I can show you here, in the Pilling Commission, paragraph 211 and 209, I believe it is, where the Pilling Commission agreed with us that the Royal College of Psychiatrists had misused the primary sources. Now, even though they did that, nothing was done about it. And this is my fear. If any one ideology takes control in our country, it's going to be a problem. It can't be mine, and it can't be theirs. We have to come together, and we have to look at the facts in the hard science, not what these people are saying in these bodies. They are not consensus statements. They are statements by people who are lobbying within those organizations. Do not make the mistake of believing that every psychiatrist in the land marches behind those views, because I can tell you they don't, because I speak to them.
Do you understand why most people would say that if in your mission statement you talk about issues of sexual brokenness, including homosexuality, that if your starting reference is that homosexuality is broken sexuality, then you are suggesting, at the very least, that a person needs in some way repaired or fixed in order to be whole? Do you accept that?
Could you tell me why it is that 50% of the clients who come in my direction don't even support the worldview that I offer, and that is the foundation of the charity? The issue is not theology. The issue is their practical experience. They don't accord with the idea that just because you have the feelings, you are gay. They don't accept that.
But
now, yes.
Why do you use the word brokenness in your mission?
Because the scriptures.
Brokenness. Do you see how offensive that may sound
to Orthodox Christians, it's clear, very clear. Because the scriptures are always about oppositeness in relationships. There's nowhere that sameness in terms of intimate sexual relationships is held up in the scripture. And that is affirmed by biblical scholars who are gay affirming. They are gay affirming, they are biblical scholars, and they are clear about what the Bible teaches around this issue.
But do you think there's a place for words like brokenness in therapy, in a therapeutic setting?
I don't think I've used the word this year.
It's in your mission statement.
It's in our mission statement.
Which is what people see when they come onto your website. It's the first thing I saw.
I'm not apologizing for our mission statement. We stand with our mission statement. Homosexuality, for many people, does feel broken. The difference between us, however, and groups like the professional mental health bodies that you are citing, is that we are not telling everybody to line up with us, as they are telling us to line up with them. We don't support their point of view.
You described in your letter to us that some of the historic practices known as conversion therapy you described as abhorrent and ineffective. What practices are you referring to?
Well, I think the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the General Medical Council need to be called to question here. They are the perpetrators of things like electroshock therapy that was used for decades. This is not something that came from the church or from religious groups. It was the medics who did that. But somehow, very successfully, these things have been pinned onto so-called conversion therapy, these extreme things that disappeared 20 years ago. So, I think the government needs to be asked, are they going to dig deep into their pockets and compensate all the historical cases that came about because of the inability of the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the General Medical Council to deal with the emotional issues behind all of that? There are very clear issues here, and the hypocrisy of the fact that actually electroshock therapy is still in use today among certain depressed people. Nobody talks about that, but it's still in use. So, we need to get a lot more nuanced in terms of what we mean about poor practice and things that need to be banned.
Are you aware of conversion therapy or support groups in Northern Ireland that have partaken in nude role play? Are you aware of it? What's your view on it?
I have heard about all sorts of things, actually all over the world, that could never stand up as standard psychotherapy or counseling practice. And that is why we need a central body that vets all such practices and offers good guidance. And we have this now for the last 5 years. The International Federation for Therapeutic and Counseling Choice is an organization that does exactly that. It works with conservative-minded people who value the Judeo-Christian values and looks at what is good and what is bad. And that's what needs to be encouraged. Not a blanket ban on any such practice. If nudity has been used, then I would be fully behind them, and that needs to be investigated and looked at if that is something that has been happening.
Does it concern you that we have been told that it has happened in Northern Ireland in terms of individual and group?
Of course it concerns me. I have made my views very clear about that. I have not encouraged people to go to any such group, inside or outside of the country. Now, if it's happened in those groups, those are things that need to be complained about to the organizations concerned. But in Core Issues Trust, by principle, we have never done that and will never do that. I just don't understand what the point is, what people are trying to achieve. It's misguided and harmful.
What's your view on Boris Johnson's commitment to ban conversion therapy?
Yes, what did he call it? Abominable, or he used all sorts of words. Minister Liz Truss has done the same thing. Tony Blair has said things. David Cameron has said things. But they are all part of the same ideological point of view. This is emotive language that betrays the fact that what we're dealing here with is ideology. It's not science. So politicians can express their points of view, and they can talk about banning extremes, but I'm afraid we're going to have to get a lot more nuanced, and we're going to have to get a lot closer to the actual scientific record and see what we need to do with this issue.
Do you have anything to fear over the expected ban on conversion therapy?
Well, we don't do conversion therapy. So if they ban what we are doing, I'm afraid they have made a mistake. And I think if they do ban a point of view, a Christian point of view around homosexuality, it may disappear in some of the more liberal churches, but as we see all over the world where that is the case, the churches themselves begin to wane and themselves eventually disappear. The truth is, this is a fact. For Christian believing people, homosexuality is a problem. That is not something we have to impose on everybody else. But you know, in ancient history, the Greeks and the Romans were busy with homosexuality for millennia. It was no problem. It was not the same case with Israel. Israel was completely different. And what we have here is a combination or a confrontation between two specific worldviews. It happened in the book of Corinthians in the Bible around sexuality, and it's happening today. It's two contrary points of view that are waging a war between themselves. That's what we're dealing with.
In terms of Gareth Patterson, do you think it was right that you used Gareth Patterson's emails, albeit anonymously, in a press release criticising a BBC News reporter? Do you think that was the right thing to do?
Well, here's the thing. In his testimony, which he did say we could publish, what he says is essentially what we released in the email trails. It's incorrect to say that we released the emails. We didn't release the emails. We did not connect them with his name. We released trails, and if I may just read what he said in 2012. Certain bodies are lobbying for an end to therapy for men who want to overcome these struggles. How dare they, he says. As a man who has been on the receiving end of this kind of help and a medical professional myself, I say we should give it greater support. Now that's what he's...
That was in 2012.
So he has
matured, and he now believes.
And he was...
that what happened to him was damaging, because he was told...
And he's entitled to believe that, but here's the point. You know, between 2009 and 2012, when I was in email contact with Gareth, he never changed his point of view. And it's only in 2020 that he now raises the issue, and he does it publicly as part of a campaign, and
because he wants
doesn't
to speak out,
raise
he feels that he is in a place
complaint.
where he is in a strong enough position in his private and personal life to speak on behalf of those who are more vulnerable and who are younger and who may be in the same.
Well, you make a good defense for him.
I'm not defending anyone, I'm saying facts, and that's what he has told us.
Well, that's how he feels. He's perfectly entitled to change his mind. But that's the point. If people change their mind, of course they're not going to support the point of view that they held earlier on.
But surely the point that a lot of these young people are making at is that in their late teens and early 20s, they didn't know what it was to be gay. They were frightened. They thought they were going to lose everything. You know, one person has said to us, I would have lost everything. I didn't have an option but to go and try and see if this therapy would work for me. But is free will really having a load of gun pointed to your head? And it's only years later that person as well, now that he does have free will, is realising how damaging it was and that he wasn't broken. He didn't need
loaded gun. So, you know, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The world has changed. There is more choice today. There is more places to go to get gay-affirming therapy. The LGBT lobby is very strong in the way it's communicating with the world, and we need to allow people who have a different point of view to have their space as well. I'm sorry that these two men are unhappy, but I'm afraid they cannot use their experience to impose values on everybody else. Please speak to the numerous people who are happy with what they have received from us.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify again in terms of the question about the emails. Just to clarify what you're saying, because the content of Gareth Patterson's emails were private and confidential, did you release his emails?
We did not.
Did you ask his consent before you used them?
We did not release his emails. We released a trail that is very similar to what he did approve in terms of his testimony that was released in 2012.
There was an email trail that you released that was very similar to his testimony?
Yes, it was.
And did you ask his consent to release those emails?
No, because the content was very similar to what he had released for publication in 2012.
8 years ago. When he was in his early 20s and he had a very different viewpoint.
A trainee doctor, I think he knows the value or the importance of following procedure. That's the one thing he would have learned, certainly in the first couple of years of his training, that if there are complaints and if there are ethical issues, you follow the protocol, you follow the complaints procedure. He didn't do that. He has joined a campaign and he's busy contributing to that campaign. It's just too easy to say that he was innocent and naive. He was 22 years old, beginning training in a sensitive area of caregiving. I think he was mature enough to know that he could have spoken. He had already engaged me as somebody who he said he was wanting to talk to. He never once came with the information and shared that there were issues in the group that he was concerned with.
Do you think that most people would think it reasonable that no matter the resemblance to previous testimony, that if you were going to release a former client's private and confidential emails, you should have asked his consent first?
I give you an undertaking today that if Gareth Patterson wants to make a formal complaint, we will investigate exactly what has happened. And if there is something that we are answerable to, certainly I will come back to you about that. And it won't be me who is investigating, it will be the procedure as laid down in our procedures.
Have you anything else that you wanted to say?
I think that we should talk about the Faith and Sexuality survey and about suicide.
So would you want to tell me what your views on the Faith and Sexuality survey are?
Well, I think we have a problem with the Faith and Sexuality survey because, number one, it's an online survey, which is generally recognized to be problematic. Number two, it focused only on LGBT persons, so if you weren't LGBT, you weren't allowed to contribute to it, which means it was probably 20 times over representative of the national number of LGBT people, if you want to generalize the findings. It totally ignored the 13% of people or the 13 people who said that they had benefited from therapy. It just ignored them. It asked the question, but just didn't go with it. And then it also totally ignored national indexes that look at harm in relation to suicide. So the National Confidentiality Inquiry into Suicide and Social and Safety within Mental Health, which is probably the biggest University of Manchester database that has been going for decades, was not referenced at all. And there it's very clear that in the age group that the FSS was focusing on, the antecedents for suicide were things like alcohol and the misuse of drugs and bereavement, and only a tiny proportion related to LGBT persons and issues. So I'm afraid what is taken by the media, and the FSS was largely trumpeted as being the very essence of the issue. This is something we have to be very careful with. This is an inaccurate, unscientific document that is being proclaimed as being representative of what's happening in this issue. And I think we need to be very careful of this.
And in terms of suicide, what is your view on suicide? There has been, and I certainly, as a journalist, in terms of my own research, have talked to people who said that having undergone some of the support therapy, or they did feel that their shame was compounded. They did feel at times suicidal. What is your view on that? You think that there is an agenda there?
My view is that we must look at the whole population. So who has done the work in terms of suicidal ideation, in terms of the population group that normally comes in my direction? Who has studied the people who formerly identified as LGBT, no longer want to go in that direction, but can't get help? Who's done the work and the research to look at that population? And the answer is nobody's done it. So to have a sample of one, this is the point I'm trying to make here. If you're studying the effectiveness of the gym, let us say, and you've got two groups. One group goes to the gym and enjoys the gym and does really well, but 50% of them fall out with it and go in a different direction. And then the journalists only follow the group who fell out with it. Well, you're going to end up with a very distorted picture. We have to look at the whole population group, and we have to do things in a way that things can be generalized to the whole population group. The study that was done by the government in 2018, the LGBT strategy, purposely excluded anybody who was not LGBT, which meant that it purposely excluded anybody who was formerly LGBT and who had undergone the therapy and did feel a benefit from it. So please tell me, where is there balance in our scientific endeavor in this study? And who controls the money to do it? And what is the agenda behind those who fund the research? We have a serious problem in this country, and it's around the credibility of scientific data when it comes to LGBT issues. And it's got to change. Banning things is not going to help. What will help is if we regulate, if we make sure that people have proper training, that there is decent access to professional development, and where there are checks and balances. And that's what we're asking for in Core Issues Trust and in the International Federation. I think that's a very reasonable thing to do.
What about those people who would say that you too have an agenda, that you believe fundamentally that homosexuality is sinful, is wrong, is broken sexuality, and that is why young men, like the men that we have encountered in our research, have ended up trying desperately to date women and having their sense of shame compounded?
Well, in your population of one, I am saying you are getting a distorted point of view because you refuse to interview those, at least two of them, I would suggest, since you've mentioned two people in the program, who have benefited from this. I hold a point of view, and you hold a point of view. Do we really think the BBC is neutral? It's not neutral. It holds a point of view.
I'm neutral. I believe I'm neutral. I believe that, and I've just raised the point with you, that there are people who will say that surely if you come to the argument believing that homosexuality is broken sexuality, as it says in your mission statement, that it is sinful, then your objectivity is clouded. How could it not be? How could you not have an agenda?
You'd have to ask the 700 odd people who have gone through what we do to ask their opinion about objectivity and how that features with them. But they all can't be wrong. They benefited from it. There does need to be checks and balances. We do need to inform people about what, research that is coming out that is saying about all of these issues. We do need to educate broadly anybody who's dealing with these issues. I agree with that.
Gareth Patterson and Gary Adair Gilliland told us that in both their cases, their support group leaders shared with them, told them that they themselves had managed to suppress and control their same-sex attraction and that they could do the same. Do you think that that was appropriate behaviour for someone in a support role?
You know, I don't know what happened in that context, and I'm not going to comment on groups over which I have no control. I think it would be unreasonable to do that. I do know this, that, you know, one man's repression is another man's discipline. And to simply write off the change and the positive experience that some people experience and label it as repression is unfair. The work that we do is about replacing unmet emotional needs with legitimate emotional needs so that the sexualization process doesn't have to happen because the emotional undercurrent has been dealt with. That's the work that we do, and I think that's a reasonable thing to do, but that does not mean that these individuals are all repressed. That may have been the case with the two people that you have mentioned, because for whatever reason, the underlying emotional issues were not dealt with. But that does not mean that it is the case for everybody.
But as a general principle, do you think it's appropriate that a therapist or a support worker should share their own sexuality with their client?
You know, you get different modalities, you get different points of view and different philosophies in terms of how people work in support groups. I don't know what models that they are using, but if they were people who were just sharing in a biblical context and they were all sharing experience, I don't think that there should be a problem with that. If we're talking about a professional context, well, psychoanalytical theorists will never share anything about themselves. But people from other groups will, people who have other training, will enter into that. It depends very much on what their training is and what their ethical position is. It would be very difficult to make a statement about the right or wrongness of that. That happened, and it clearly was not helpful for those two people. That I can understand. So Mandy, if this was a balanced program, why is it that we've only concentrated on these two individuals and nobody else? I don't understand how you can honestly, hand on heart, say that you are neutral here.
Andrew, so I have given you a platform to speak very openly and candidly about your.
But you've promoted. You are promoting. Then why are you not platforming people who have benefited?
Because can every organisation? I mean, we have got two people who are speaking for the first time on camera, who are giving their views. We have given you a very, very, very adequate right of reply, and you know you're here. We're asking you about your group. We're asking you about the people that you've helped.
But you're using the emotional context, the appeal of two people who are speaking on camera for the first time, and it will simply promote one point of view. Why are you not allowing the same from two other people? You say you don't need to do it because you're hearing from me?
We are hearing from you. We've given.
But I can't take the role of, you know, a client and somebody who's offering help. That's not balance. How is that balance? I cannot in the same breath be the counselor and the client. But that's what you've asked me to do here. It's not balanced.
Well, obviously if you have got a problem or, there is a process that you can say,
Well, you know, we can do that, but it's too late, isn't it? That's why it feels that this is very much part of the campaign. You are supporting it.
Campaigning journalists, I'm an ambassador for journalists.
Well, it doesn't feel like that.
I think the programme is a very, very fair programme.
Well, I'm sure it is. In many ways, what I've seen, it is. But in this instance, I'm afraid it isn't, is my view.
Well, you're just saying one interview. You haven't seen the whole programme.
That's true. But have you consulted anybody who has a positive experience?
Well, we have spoken to a huge range of people for this programme.
And you didn't find anybody with a positive experience?
Of conversion therapy?
Well, we don't offer conversion therapy. That is a term that is being imposed on us. Did you find anybody who has undergone therapeutic support that has led them in a positive direction around this area, around areas of sexuality, and specifically about moving away from unwanted same-sex attractions?
We didn't find anyone who had unwanted same-sex attraction.
So I would say that, what are we saying then? Because then the population, it's again back to a population of one.
It's not, what do you mean population?
A population of one. They've all got the same ideological point of view. We were all hurt by conversion therapy. Where are the people who have been helped? It's there in the ONS statistics and in the NatCell statistics that there are people who start off gay and then 10 years later they no longer identify gay and they're married to an opposite sex partner. What about all the bisexual people who decide that they want to go in the direction of heterosexuality and do? And that's how they identify. And they are there in the society. You may not have picked them up, but you could have asked.
Have you got enough shots?
But I believe we've got a very fair and balanced program.
Well, I'm glad. I really hope it is. I don't mean to, imply that it won't be, but I worry that there isn't more of an opportunity to hear from people who benefit. You can do your own investigation. It's not I'm going to sit in a corner and tell them what to do. They are willing to speak to journalists. But the journalists don't want to speak to them. And that's a problem. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.